Talk about a doozy, but I kept on working. Worked at the coal mine all night long. Well, I had a good buddy named Bud Willis. He drove a wrecker like old Mel Tellis, but I kept on working. Worked at the coal mine all night long. Well, I worked at the coal mine. I worked at the coal mine all night long. I worked, yeah, I worked.
Gangways through the mine, and gangways were the main highways, and they were driven as level as conditions would permit. As near perpendicular to the gangways, the chambers were driven. Following the rise of the coal beds, the chambers were driven either to the surface or a upper level gangway. Now, each of these chambers were separated by pillars of coal of varying thickness. Grab these pillars of coal. Now, as mining progressed and new chambers were driven, the old chambers were sealed off by stoppings, which are shown by the red lines. Stoppings were simply air walls. If they were of a permanent nature, they were made of masonry construction. If they were of a temporary nature, they were made of suitable materials to effectively channel.
What is it?
I wouldn't want to fall down now. How about we go down to find out? No.
Trip hazard. So please be aware of this trip hazard as we enter and exit the mining equipment area. Into the mine, if you follow my light, you'll see that they ran a bare wire cable along the roof of the mine there, and they introduced the electric locomotive. The electric locomotive made it a lot easier to haul more tonnage of coal through the mine, but that bare wire cable posed a hazard. That was 277 volts direct current. It was always energized, so if a mine worker happened to be walking along the tracks, he tripped, he reached up and hit that cable, he could get electrocuted. Behind the electric locomotive, 3 rings. We would simply just pick up the earpiece and crank this 3 times. They would pick up in the White House and we can converse with them. But there's one thing you had to keep in mind with this type of telephone. It was a party line system, meaning anyone in a different section of the mine or a building on the surface where a phone was located could easily pick up their earpiece and listen in on the conversation. So you never said anything bad about a fellow mine worker, because that mine worker listening in could very easily be your boss, and if you got your boss angry, you'd be in one heck of a mess. Methane and carbon dioxide. Methane was generated during the formation of coal, and it was trapped and stored in the coal itself. It was released when they drilled the holes for the explosives and during the blasts. And methane became very volatile when mixed with the stale coal air and coal dust. We also had carbon dioxide. The coal itself, once it's exposed to the mine air, will begin absorbing oxygen, leading to the release of carbon dioxide. And the warmer the weather, the more carbon dioxide the coal released. That gas is heavier than air, pulls near the floor, and could easily suffocate a mine worker. This is what's called a permissible flame safety lamp, and unfortunately our flame went out. And this is what was used as the working light and to detect the gases. The first safety lamp was invented over in England in 1813 by English physician Dr. William Clanny. 2 years later, Sir Humphrey Davy fabricated his Davy lamp, followed by George Stephenson, who built his version of the Davy lamp. There was another inventor by the name of Marceau, who lived and worked in France. The lamp he built in 1871 was the safest ever designed, and there were only 2 permissible flame safety lamps allowed in the American mines, and they are the Wolf and the Kohler. And they are directly related to the Marceau design and construction. Now, if the miner was in his chamber and he noticed the flame was elongating and it had a blue cap writing on it, that told him the gas was present. If he wanted to check for carbon dioxide, he would take the lamp, drop it near the floor, and if the flame began to grow dim, that told him the gas was present. If either of these gases were present in his chamber, he would have to leave until such time as the mine foreman said it was safe to come back in and extract the coal. Now, there was a third gas in the mine, carbon monoxide. That was the result of the combustion of the explosives that they used during a mine fire. And that gas was not detectable by the flame safety lamp. So if you look up here, you'll see miners began bringing canaries into the mine to check for carbon monoxide. Canaries were used because they were very active birds. They were always singing. They had a bright yellow coloration to them, and they were easily visible in the mine. They also had a complex unit, the efficiency of which exposed the bird to the toxic effect of the gas far quicker than a human could experience it. So if the miner was in his chamber and he noticed the canary wasn't singing or it was acting very sluggish in its cage, that was his signal the chamber was gassy. He would grab the cage, leave the chamber until such time as the foreman told him it was safe to come back in. They would sometimes bring in a second miner to push against the first miner with all of his strength to provide additional force to the drill. This was very labor-intensive, back-breaking work. Once the miner had the hole drilled, in the very early days, they were using black powder. Black powder was the primary blasting agent in coal mines up until around 1917.
In the hole, fire in the hole, fire in the hole.
Now push it down slow. Well, are you guessing? You can't guess in the mine, because that could be your last mistake. How many?
10.
That was only 10. We went over, you're all right.
Wow.
For many years. The guy that mules through the mine was a young boy in his teens, and this is probably his second job on the ground. Now, mules were used because of their strength and their sure-footedness, and they were less susceptible to disease than horses. However, they were very stubborn, so at the start of the boy's shift, whenever he went into the mule barn to get his mule, he had to have snacks like carrots and chewing tobacco, as most of these mules chewed tobacco, much like the mine workers did, to keep the coal dust out of their throats. Now, on the boy's cap, you see he's got the carbide gas lamp. They came into general use around 1910, and they were an improvement over the old oil wick lamp. As the flame burned brighter and cleaner, and it spared the boy the smoke and the soot of the old oil wick lamp. But it still posed a hazard. If he was leading a trip through the mine and he walked into a pocket of undetected methane, the open flame could easily ignite the gas. Okay, because what miners are taught is they can carry, they try to get their hands closer to grease so that they can move them so the rescuers can see them. But one of the school groups took our controller out, so we can't give you that demonstration anymore. Okay, what we have here.
How recent?
As the miners had to crawl in on all fours and work in some very uncomfortable positions throughout their shift. To protect their knees from the sharp rocks as they crawled into the chamber, they had these rubber knee pads that they would strap along their knees. Now, once the miner had the coal all blasted free, him and his laborer would crawl back up into the chamber. They would pull these chutes behind them. They weigh about 100 pounds apiece. They would connect them together and load the blasted coal onto the chute. Once the motor was turned on, the chute would vibrate. It's called the shaker chute. As the chute was vibrating, sending the coal down to the waiting coal car, all the dust from the coal became airborne, along with all the dust that the chute stirred up from the floor of the chamber, making it extremely difficult for the miners to see and for the miners to breathe. Okay, if anybody else wants to go up there and get a good look or get some pictures, I'm gonna sneak back here and wait. Want to straddle the rail.
see that? There's two guys.
As they burned, they gave up a lot of smoke, soot, and a lot of sparks shot out. So, working with that light, he leaned over and a spark hit the tube while he was putting the black powder in there to blow up. Between the intake and return airways, further push fresh air deeper into the workings. They put the doors in pairs to create an airlock. Inside the airlock was a young boy, sometimes as young as 8 years old, and his job was to ensure that these heavy wooden doors remain tightly closed, only to be opened to allow the trip in. Now, state law mandated that you be at least 14 years old to work underground. This law was not really enforced, as these young boys were a good source of cheap labor for the coal company. Now, the boy had to listen very carefully because the only signal he had a trip was coming through were the rumblings of the car on the outside of the door. Once he heard the rumblings of the car, he would open one set of doors, allow the trip into his lock. He would close that set of doors, race to the second set of doors, open it up, allow the trip to continue on through and close that set of doors. Now on his cab, the door, they could come crashing through the door, pinning the boy against the narrow passageway. Now on his lap, you see he's got a typical miner's lunchbox, which is made of metal. And that was to protect the food from the rats that patrol the mine. But the door boy, much like the other mine workers, always brought scraps of food from home to feed the rats. They fed the rats because they wanted to befriend them, because if bitten, the rat could easily cause their death. Secondly, rats had a keen sense of smell and a keen sense of hearing. If he was sitting here in his airlock, he noticed a pack of rats squeezing under that set of doors, racing through his airlock and squeezing through that set of doors. That was his signal. They sensed something wrong in that section of the mine. He would immediately get a message to the mine foreman to do an inspection in that section of the mine before allowing any trips to continue on through. Rats were kind of like the mine workers' best friends, as they played a key role in their survival underground. Drop the cage down, take us out 2 or 3 at a time, like they did exactly 5 weeks ago today when the mine hoist broke. Those people made out. They got, they paid for a mine tour. Not only did they get a mine tour, they got like experience.
Literally in a coal mine.
Carbon dioxide doesn't smell so good.
Wow. Did you hear him say that the beams are the early warning system? The beams don't actually support anything.
Oh.
However, if the beams start
Collapse, and they'll make a cracking and popping noise when they fall apart.
and then you'll start to see them bow out like that and bend.
Why is it going on now?
He would attach it to the end of the car, and the car would be pulled to the foot of the shaft or slope, depending on what entrance they used into the mine, where there was an inspector. The inspector's job was to ensure that the car was filled to capacity with clean coal. If the car was not at capacity or it contained any rock, there'd be a deduction in the miner's paycheck. So that's why they called him the docking boss. Now, if the miner's laborer wanted to advance and become a qualified miner, he would have to appear in person before the county miners examining committee and meet 2 requirements. The first requirement, a test on his behalf that he had worked underground at the coal face for at least 2 years. The second requirement was he would have to take a 12-question test in the English language on the practices and duties of cutting coal. Between 1870 and 1914, the demand for anthracite rose from 14 million ton to over 91 million ton. There was little mechanization in the American mines prior to World War I, so the expansion of production was contingent on the ever-increasing number of immigrants coming over from Eastern and Southern Europe, whom the coal operators deemed expendable. By 1914, this area alone had 32 different European nationalities employed in the anthracite mine industry. Does anybody have any questions?
The poles, see.
Pipes?
Yep.
Okay, remember at the beginning when I showed you that cable?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they were for. A lot of them have the connectors cut off there because so far we haven't lost any inspectors.
So that's good.
Anybody else?
Good question.
Yes.
What's the difference between what makes coal coal? I don't know if it's a right question to ask.
No. The difference between coal and anthracite, the other word.
It's just like any normal rock.
Anthracite versus bituminous? Yeah, anthracite has a higher carbon content. It's the highest level of coal there is. And it burns a lot cleaner than bituminous. For example, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the DLNW Railroad. It was the Erie Lackawanna for years that ran from New York City to Buffalo, New York. If anybody goes over to Steamtown and you see a girl walking around in a white gown, white hat, white shoes, white gloves, and a white parasol, that was the fictitious character that the DLNW Railroad marketing agent created. Her name was Phoebe Snow. And that's what they used to call the route from New York to Buffalo, the route of the Phoebe Snow. And the poem goes, Phoebe Snow says, upon a trip to Buffalo, my gown stays white from morn to night on the road of the anthracite. So if anybody goes over to Steamtown and you do see a young girl walking around and dressed in all white, that's what it was all about, because that's how clean anthracite burns versus bituminous. And you don't want bituminous coal. There's too many toxic vapors. You wouldn't use that to heat your home. That was mainly used in the steel industry where they converted to coke.
Okay, we're gonna go up. Look at this. We're gonna go up. We're about 250 feet underground.
Ready to go up.
Okay, can we do the hyperlapse?
Yeah, well then we're gonna record the whole one first.
The person you see in your dreams. Okay, I do the hyperlapse.
Are you concerned?
Yes. Don't be concerned. Perfect.
Should be good.
See? Everything's fine. We're out.
You did it.
My leg's still hurt.
You did it.
190 is sloppy. They will be 100 for being cooperative.
Yes.
They wouldn't know we're on top of them. That's the end. They're below something. This is the little rusty unfit power thing.
I think I would probably feel pretty good about it if the mine started collapsing. You could look in it.
I was gonna stand on the metal.
22,000 cubic feet of air per minute.
Well, you won't be running up there in those mines.
Somebody rang the phone downstairs.
Yes.
Don't dance on these people's graves. That's not nice. I mean, dance all you want. Just you're dancing on someone's grave right now.
All right, let's keep looking. So here's one.